Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 1 minute past 1800 hours in South Africa. Apologies for the delayed start. I was just having some network issues. I seem to be back up and running now. I shall share my screen and start the evening's lecture. This evening, we will be covering laws 24 all the way through to 31. I will be taking you through laws 24, 25, 26, and 27. And if Abdullah is done with his game on time and gets to a place where he can present, he will take us through laws 28, 29, 30, and 31. For those of you who don't know, today was the start of the Over 50s World Cup, which is being held here in Cape Town. Myself, Abdullah, are both involved in that competition. And so that is why Abdullah will be joining us a little bit later this evening. His match started at 2:30 due to a wet pitch. There's been overnight rain in Cape Town, and the covers that were in use at the Vineyard Oval had some holes or water crept under the covers, and unfortunately that meant a delayed start for that particular match. But the show must go on. A quick reminder of the meeting protocols. Everybody's microphone is on mute and everybody's camera is off up until we have completed the presentation for this evening of the laws that I've mentioned that we'll be covering. And then I will activate everybody's cameras as well as everybody's microphones. We will go through the questions in the chat box that you would have posted. And once we are done with the questions in the chat box, if anything else needs clarity, you are welcome to raise your virtual hand and we will give you the floor for you to address us or the audience with any further questions. So let's move into this night's laws. And we're starting with law 24, which is fielder's absence and substitutes. What is a substitute fielder? The law makes clear differences between a substitute and a replacement. You'll remember that in law 2, we spoke about in fact, it was law 1 under players. We spoke about if after the toss, but before the match starts, there is an injury to a nominated player, the opposing captain can allow a replacement player to take part in the game, who will be replacing the player who was originally on the nomination sheet but got injured before the match starts. So this effectively is a change to the starting 11, and that replacement player will be allowed to bat, bowl, keep wicket, and even captain the side. So now we're going to learn about a substitute fielder. How does a substitute fielder influence the game? What is he or she allowed to do and not allowed to do according to the laws of cricket? So whereas a replacement player would be allowed by the opposing captain, law tells us that the umpires shall allow a substitute fielder and only under certain conditions. If the umpires are satisfied that a fielder has been injured or become ill and that this occurred during the match, or for any other wholly acceptable reason, then they shall allow a substitute. In all other circumstances, substitute is not allowed. And specifically, the law mentions comfort breaks. A player cannot just go off the field because they need the toilet. yes, they can go off the field if they need the toilet, but law tells us that you're not allowed a substitute if that's the case. Quite often, the smart captains tell their players that the player should tell the umpire that they need to go for strapping when in fact they need to go to the toilet. But we only accept what they have told us. So if the reason is for strapping that they need to go off, then we will allow a substitute. And we have the luxury in provincial cricket and international cricket for a third umpire who can go and check up on that supposedly injured player who's gone for strapping after, say, 8 minutes, that they are actually getting strapping done, and why are they not back on the field yet? So quite important, as you know, everything in green text is examined in the level 1 Cricket South Africa online exam. So what's important in this particular sentence is the fact that the injury or illness has to have occurred during the match. And then any other wholly acceptable reason. We have a lot of students who play in the club leagues here in Cape Town, and quite often they have exams on a Saturday morning. So we could arrive at a match. 9:30 is supposed to be the toss. The captain of University of Cape Town will tell us that one or two of their players are currently writing an exam. They finish at 11 a.m., so they will arrive at the field at 11:30. They are on the nomination list, so they are due to bat or bowl for University of Cape Town. However, in the time that they are not there, because writing of an exam is a wholly acceptable reason, we shall allow a substitute to field in the place of the player who is writing an exam. And obviously, once that player is done writing the exam and gets to the field, then he or she will join the game and the substitute will go off. Quite importantly, a substitute shall not bowl or act as captain, but may act as only with the consent of the umpires. We've spoken about a fielder coming back into play without the umpire's permission. Let's see what the law says about this particular act. If a fielder fails to take the field at the start of the match or at any time or leaves the field during play, an umpire shall be informed of the reason for this absence. And us as umpires need to always note the time that the player leaves the field or does not come back onto the field after a interval. We need to note the reason as to why that player is not on the field. And we need to remind the captain that when that player wants to come back onto the field, they need to ask us permission to allow him back onto the field. Law tells us that that player shall not thereafter come onto the field of the umpire. The umpire shall give such consent as soon as is practical. Normally, this is at the end of an over, not during an over, or if a wicket falls or we have a drinks break, then the player can return to the field. It is very rare to see a player being allowed back onto the field in the middle of an over, unless, like I said, for example, there was a wicket that fell in the middle of the over, at which point it's perfectly allowable for that player, with the umpire's consent, comes back onto the field. Now, is there any punishment as to what that fielder can do and cannot do when he or she comes back onto the field? Yes, there is. The law tells us that he or she shall not be permitted to bowl until having been back on the field of play for the same amount of time, which is known as penalty time, as he or she was off the field, up to a maximum of 90 minutes. So in simple terms, if the player was off the field for 30 minutes, he needs to be back on the field for 30 minutes before he or she can bowl again. So let's just make an easy example. Play begins in a 5-day test match at 10 a.m. as scheduled, and the opening bowler in his third over pulls up with a tight hamstring and leaves the field at 10:20, gets treatment and is back on the field at 10:50. So that opening bowler has been off the field for 30 minutes. Law says that when he gets back onto the field, we as umpires need to calculate and communicate to him when he can bowl again. 50 plus 30 minutes, you would think that the bowler can bowl again at 11:20. However, law will tell us that we need to take the drinks and we will adjust that time that he can bowl again by the length of the drinks break. I will amend my example or amend my answer once we have come to that law in the next slide or two. If the player leaves the field before having served all of his or her penalty time, the balance is carried forward as unreserved penalty time. So what this means is, in my example, where the player left the field at 10:20, came back onto the field at 10:50. At 10:50, he owed us 30 minutes of penalty time. If he's only on the field for 10 minutes and goes off the field at 11 a.m. and is off the field for, let's say, another 40 minutes, law tells us that we're going to add that 20 minutes that he owed us at 11 a.m. and we're going to add it to his new or his second time off the field, which is 40 minutes. So when he comes back on for the second time, he will owe us 20 plus 40 minutes, which is an hour, 60 minutes. Okay. On any occasion of absence, the amount of playing time for which the player is off the field shall be added to any penalty time that remains unserved, and that player shall not bowl until all of his or her penalty time is served. So that's just expanding on the fact that he can go on and off as many times as he wants to, but penalty time increases every time he goes off the field and decreases for the amount of time that he's on the field. Okay, I will give you a detailed example once we have looked at a scheduled interval. What do we do in and around scheduled intervals when it comes to penalty time? So here it is. Law tells us that the period of time for a scheduled interval does not add to unserved penalty time, nor does it count as penalty time served. So because it's not playing time, and in Law 11, we looked at what is considered as a scheduled interval. You'll remember that it is any interval for drinks, any interval for meals, and then the period between the close of play on one day and the start of play the next day, and any agreed schedule, any agreed interval. So those are the 4 examples of scheduled intervals. So now let us use a drinks break in our penalty time calculation. So remember that in a test match, the morning session is from 10 a.m. until 12 midday. And halfway through that session, we have a 4 minutes drinks break from 1100 hours until 1104. So what the law tells us is, because those 4 minutes of the drinks break are not considered as playing time, if a player is off the field during a drinks break, that 4 minutes will not be adding to the penalty time that he or she needs to serve when they come back onto the field. Or if a player is on the field serving penalty time when a drinks break comes around, that 4 minutes will not be counted as penalty time served. So let me give you an example, and we're going to first edit the earlier example that I gave. Opening bowler is on the field from 10 a.m. until 20 past 10 when he pulls his hamstring. He goes off for treatment from 10:20 until 10:50. So he has been off the field for 30 minutes. At 10:50, when he comes back onto the field, he owes us 30 minutes of penalty time. So he is on the field when the drinks break starts at 11 a.m. So from 10:50 till 11 a.m., he served 10 minutes. So when the drinks break started, he owed us 30 minutes minus the 10 minutes served, gives us 20 minutes of penalty time still to be served. The law tells us in this point number 5 that the 4 minutes of drinks break is not playing time. Therefore, even though he is on the field and drinks breaks do take place on the field, that 4 minutes will not count as penalty time served. So his penalty time served will only continue again from 4 minutes past 11. And so from 4 minutes past 11, he still owes us 20 minutes. So he will be allowed to bowl at 24 minutes past 11. Why 24 minutes past 11? We said at 10:50, when he came back onto the field, he owed us 30 minutes. 10:50 until 11 a.m., he served 10 minutes. 11 a.m. until 11:04 is a drinks break, not considered as playing time. So the 4 minutes do not count for or against him. So he still owes us 20 minutes when the drinks break is finished at 11:04. And that is why from 11:04 until 11:24 is the 20 minutes that he still owes us, that he needs to serve. So only at 11:24 can he bowl again. Okay, I hope you understand how a drinks break does not add to your penalty time if you're off the field, but also does not reduce your penalty time while you're on the field, because it is not considered playing time. If there's an unscheduled break in play, the stoppage time shall count as penalty time served, provided that a few things take place. Firstly, we need to define what is an unscheduled break. The most common unscheduled break is a rain interruption. Okay, so now what the law is going to tell us is that the stoppage time can actually count as penalty time served, provided that the following criteria are met. The fielder who was on the field of play at the start of the break either takes the field on the resumption of play or his or her side is batting. Let me give you an example to illustrate this point. So let's go with the same bowler and the same injury times. So the match started at 10 a.m. He went off the field at 10:20. He comes back onto the field at 10:50. So at 10:50, when he comes back onto the field, he owes us 30 minutes. He is on the field for 15 minutes. However, remember we said that the drinks break doesn't count for or against him. So from 10:50 until 11:05, he has served only 11 minutes worth of penalty time. Why? Because 4 of those 15 minutes were the drinks break. So at 11:05, having served 11 minutes of penalty time, he still owes us 19 minutes. At 11:05, it starts to rain. Okay. Now, what the law is telling us here is that if this bowler was on the field when it started to rain, yes, he was, he needs to come back onto the field, or he needs to be on the field again when play resumes. So let's say that it was a very short rain break. It rained from 11:05 until 11:20, which is 15 minutes. And the law says that the player was on the field when the rain interruption started, and he comes back onto the field with the rest of his teammates after the unscheduled break at 11:20. Then if those two criteria are met, then the bowler can use that 15 minutes as penalty time served. Why? Because if it didn't rain, he would have been on the field and he would have served that penalty time. So in this example, even though he's off the field with the rest of the team from 11:05 until 11:20, it is considered as penalty time served because he was on the field when the rain break started and he came back on the field with his teammates when the rain interval ended at 11:20. So at 11:20, when he comes back onto the field, I said he owed us 19 minutes at 11:05. He's now been serving penalty time during the rain break. 19 minus 15, he now owes us 4 minutes when he comes back onto the field at 11:20. So again, he can bowl at 11:24. I hope that makes sense to all of you. Those calculations are not examined in the level 1 exam. We do have calculations for penalty time in level 2 and level 3, but it's just good for your understanding to know how to calculate penalty time. You might come across it in your first match before you do level 2 and level 3. What if the fielder was already off the field at the start of the unscheduled break? Law tells us that that fielder can notify an umpire in person as soon as he or she is able to participate, and then takes the field on the resumption of play, or his or her side is now batting. If those criteria are met, then the time after the fielder has notified the umpire, either umpire, that they are ready to go back on the field, even though it's still raining, that time will count as penalty time served if the player goes back onto the field with his teammates after the rain interruption. Okay, so let's give an example here, and it's going to differ slightly from what I've previously given you. The bowler bowls, and in his third over pulls a hamstring at 10:20. So he still goes off at 10:20, and then at 10:30, it starts to rain. Okay, so he's been off the field for 10 minutes of play. So he owes us at 10:30, when it starts to rain, he owes us 10 minutes of penalty time. Now, a player's penalty time can only increase if there is actually play that he's missing out on. So because at 10:30 it starts to rain and there is no further play for the time being, then the penalty time that he owes is not going to increase. What the law says here is that 15 minutes into the rain break at 10:45, the player comes to the umpire's room, knocks on the door, and confirms to either umpire that he is now fit to play and to go back onto the field. We don't go back onto the field because it's still raining. However, at 11:05, it has stopped raining. Okay? So what the law says is, because the player personally went to inform the umpire or umpires of his readiness and fitness to be back onto the field, if he then does go back onto the field with his teammates after the rain interruption at 11:05, then the time from which he informed the umpires that he is fit for play, 10:45 to 11:05, which is 20 minutes, that shall count as penalty time served. You'll remember that he actually only owed us 10 minutes because he was off the field from 10:20 to 10:30. So this means that when we go back onto the field and that player joins us at the same time when we call play, then the bowler can bowl again at 11:05. Why? Because he served penalty time during the rain break, because he had declared himself fit from 10:45 until 11:05, 20 minutes. That was considered penalty time served. He only needed to serve 10 minutes penalty time. So if the rain had stopped at 10:55 and they had gone back on the field at 10:55, he would have been able to bowl at 10:55. Again, I know it's a lot to take in, and we don't have these examples spelt out in the presentation, but that's because it's not examined in the level 1 exam. Just for you guys to know if you come across a penalty time incident in a match. Any unserved penalty time shall be carried forward into the next and subsequent days and innings of the match as applicable. So if a team's bowling innings ends and a player still owes penalty time, so let's say we have a change of innings while the bowler is off the field, and he's been off the field now for 45 minutes. He owes us 45 minutes before he can bat again. So that means that he will not be able to open the batting innings for his side. He will have to wait for 45 minutes before he can bat, or the fifth wicket falls, whichever comes first, that is when he can bat. And the law describes that a little bit later in the slides. Sometimes penalty time is not incurred. Let's see when this is the case. A player's absence will not incur penalty time if he or she has suffered an external blow during the match and has left the field or is unable to take the field. So the example I've been giving for the player going off the field, the bowler in his third over pulling a hamstring, that is considered an internal injury. But law says if a fielder suffers an external blow and goes off the field, then they won't have to serve penalty time. And when they come back onto the field, no matter how long they've been off the field for, they can bowl immediately. Let me give you some examples of external blows. Bowler bowls a ball, batter edges the ball and goes to first slip. First slip, unfortunately, drops the catch, and in dropping the catch, also splits the webbing between his middle and index finger, so needs to go off for treatment because split webbing always ends up in bleeding. So because that external injury was the external injury occurred during the play, then the fielder off the field for 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, even an hour, does not need to serve penalty time when they come back onto the field. They can bowl immediately if they are a bowler. Okay. Another example of an external blow is when two fielders run into each other and collide. That is an external blow. So the ball doesn't need to be the blow that is delivered. The blow can be against the ground. It can be against advertising boards, which are just outside of the field, but are still considered part of play. And it can be against another player. It can be anything where umpires can see a player physically getting injured outside of their body or on the extremity of their body. Quite interesting. Is it an external blow or an internal injury if a player starts nose bleeding? Well, it could be either internal or external. If the ball was hit and a fielder was unable to catch the ball and the ball hit the fielder's nose, and that's how the nosebleed started, that is an external blow. Pretty simple. If, however, the nose started bleeding because of heat exhaustion by the player, that unfortunately will be considered an internal injury. And if the player goes off the field for treatment, when they come back on, they will have to serve penalty time for the length of time that they were off the field before they may bowl again. So quite important as to the reason that a fielder is going off the field, because sometimes they can be exempt from serving penalty time. But the umpires would have needed to see the incident that resulted in the external blow for which the fielder is going off the field. If you didn't see it and the player claims to have done something wrong, that's an external blow. Unfortunately, you'll have to say you did not see it. You consider it an internal injury. And if you can't see any scar on his ankle that he says he rolled over, that unfortunately you will have to consider an internal injury if you did not see the external blow happening. In the opinion of the umpires, if the player has been absent for wholly acceptable reasons, which shall not include illness or internal injury, then that player does not have to serve penalty time. Abdullah gives a good example of a club cricketer who is also a doctor, and on the morning of the game, he was on call and he left his phone with the scorers and said if he gets a call from the hospital, then the scorer should please answer that call and also alert him so that he can get to hospital ASAP to treat whichever patients needed to be treated. So that call did come. The doctor left the field at 11 a.m. and came back at 1 p.m. So he was gone for a full 2 hours. But because this was a wholly acceptable reason, especially because they communicated it before the match, the umpires waived the penalty time so that doctor could bowl immediately upon return from the hospital. Okay, so law does allow for umpires to decide what they feel is a wholly acceptable reason that the player was off the field for. When that player comes back onto the field, he or she does not have to serve penalty time and can bowl immediately. Then we have the example of players returning to the field without permission from the umpires. What happens then? Law tells us that if a player comes back onto the field of play without the umpire's permission and comes into contact with the ball while it is in play, the ball shall immediately become dead. We covered this in dead ball law last week. The umpire shall award 5 penalty runs to the batting side, and it is before awarding the 5 penalty runs to the batting side, it is good umpiring practice to call and signal dead ball, even though the ball became immediately dead. Why is it a good practice to call and signal dead ball? Because not many players know this law, and also not many players would be aware that the offending fielder came back onto the field without the permission of the umpires. Runs completed by the batters shall be scored together with the run in progress if they had already crossed at the instant of the fielder touching the ball. The ball shall not count as one of the overs, so it shall be rebowled, and the umpires will inform everybody involved and also will report the incident at the end of the day's play. Okay, so that's all to do with fielder's absence from the field. Now we're going to look at a batter's innings, and believe it or not, there are still matches around the world that allow runners in international test match cricket, as well as one-day internationals and T20 internationals. For open men and women's competitions, runners are not allowed and are not allowed in most of our playing conditions for Premier Division, Division 1 and Division 2
in Western Province Cricket Association club cricket, but the third division in Western Province Cricket Association club cricket allows runners. Why? Because the third division is mainly played by elderly gentlemen. So they do realize the need to accommodate their lack of fitness and allow runners. This is also the same in the tournament that we are involved in currently, the over 50s World Cup. Runners are allowed. So it is still in the laws. It is debarred in many playing conditions around the world, but some competitions still allow runners. So let's have a look, see what the law says about a batter's innings and runners in a match. Who can act as a batter or a runner? Only a nominated player may bat or act as a runner. When does a batter's innings commence? The innings of the first two batters and that of any new batters on the resumption of play after a call of time shall commence at the call of play. At any other time, a batter's innings shall be considered to have commenced when that batter first steps onto the field of play. So there was an example in the IPL, I think last year, where one of the teams wanted to change their batting lineup, but it was too late because the new batter who they then wanted not to go bat had already crossed the ropes and was halfway to the boundary when the batting coach tried to call him off to have a new power hitter come on earlier. But the umpire spotted that and said, if this batter that is now walking towards the pitch goes off the field again, then he would be considered as retired because his innings commenced the moment that he stepped over the rope into the field of play. If a member of the batting side has unserved penalty time, that player shall not be permitted to bat or act as a runner until the penalty time has been served. However, even if the unserved penalty time has not expired, that player may bat after his or her side has lost 5 wickets. So I made that example at the end of the previous law, that if a fielder is off the field for 45 minutes when their bowling innings comes to an end, then he or she cannot open the batting. He or she needs to wait for 45 minutes into the batting innings of his or her side, or wait until the 5th wicket falls, whichever comes first. Only then can he or she bat. In the event of an unscheduled stoppage, the stoppage time after the batter notifies an umpire in person that he or she is able to participate shall count as penalty time served. So similar to how that bowler was able to notify the umpire during a rain break that the bowler is now fit to play again. If during a batting innings there is a rain interruption and a batter is serving penalty time, that batter can inform the umpires at any point during the rain interruption that they are fit to bat. And so that time will count from the moment that he informs the umpires that he is fit to bat. That time will count as penalty time served. I spoke about a batter retiring. The law says that a batter may retire at any time during his or her innings when the ball is dead. The umpires shall be informed of the reason for retiring. Why this is important is because the scorers, if the batter does not return to bat, they will write retired out or retired hurt as per the reason given for the retirement of the batter. Here it is. If a batter retires because of illness, injury, or any other unavoidable cause, the batter is entitled to resume his or her innings. If this does not happen, that batter is to be recorded in the scorebook as retired, not out. If a batter retires for any reason other than the above, the innings of that batter may be resumed only with the consent of the opposing captain. So that's quite interesting. If the batter was not injured and he or she retired, they can only resume their innings with the consent of the opposing captain. Okay, not for the umpires to decide and not for that batter only to decide. It is the opposing captain that needs to give the consent. If his or her innings is not resumed, that batter is to be recorded as retired out. A new law that has come into play since October 2022. The striker has a right to play the ball or to make a legitimate second strike after it has been delivered without interference from the wicketkeeper or any other fielder. We will look at the restrictions of the wicketkeeper a little bit later on this evening. If, however, the striker may the striker may only attempt to play the ball if some of his or her bat or person, whether grounded or raised, remains within the pitch. A reminder as to the width of the pitch, ladies and gentlemen. I gave you a pop quiz last week, and I'm going to ask you again to see who knows their measurements. What is the width of the pitch? Not the width of the bowling crease, but the width of the entire crease. Not the width of the popping crease, but the width of the pitch. Please, if you remember it, type it into the chat box now as a refresher for all of you. What is the width of the pitch? The law says that the striker may only attempt to play the ball if some of his or her bat or person, whether grounded or raised, remains within the pitch. Should no part of the striker's bat or person remain within the pitch whilst the striker is playing the ball, either umpire shall immediately call and signal dead ball. Abdullah, correct me if I'm wrong. That should be call and signal no ball and then call and signal dead ball. I think you went through that in your no ball law last week. So you can just confirm when you are presenting a little bit later. Law 26 is practice on the field. Is practicing allowed on the field? I'm sure you've all seen before match. Yes, a lot of teams practice. Sometimes there are practice pitches prepared, sometimes they are not. But generally, you'll find that one half of the outfield is used by Team A and the other half of the outfield is used by Team B to practice before the match. But what about during the match and after a day's play before a subsequent day's play? Let us see what the law allows and disallows in terms of practice on the field. Can practice happen on the pitch? Law tells us that there shall be no practice on the pitch at any time on any day of the match. So below the text, we have a picture and you can clearly see that the two lines in the middle in red are demarcating the pitch, and law says that there shall be no practice on this pitch at any time on any day of the match. And this includes before we call play and also after we call time at stumps. There shall not be any practice on the rest of the square at any time on any day of the match, except with the approval of the umpires. So the two red lines on the outside demarcate the rest of the square. What you do find at many provincial matches, at many international grounds, is that the grounds staff prepare practice pitches, one, sometimes two, that are on the square and are specifically for the teams to practice before the match starts and also during the interval for meals. So that is allowed with the approval of the umpires on those practice pitches. Is practice on the outfield allowed? Let's see what the law says. On any day of the match, all forms of practice are permitted on the outfield. When is practice permitted on the outfield? It's permitted before the start of play and after the close of play, and during the lunch and tea intervals or the change of innings. There is a provision to this. The umpires are satisfied that such practice will not cause significant deterioration in the condition of the outfield. That judgment call is made by the umpires on the different days of play, before and after. But if the outfield was fit enough for play, then it definitely should be fit enough for after the day's play. And of course, if like today's game where Abdullah had a delayed start, if the outfield was the problem, then they wouldn't have practiced on the outfield because it was wet, dangerous, or unreasonable to practice on, certainly to play on. You need to wait until the field is fit for play before you allow practice on it. Between the call of play and the call of time, practice shall be permitted on the outfield, providing that all of the following conditions are met. So this is basically during the match. When is practice on the outfield allowed? Let's see what the law says. Only the fielders can participate in such practice. So Appendix A7 is the nomination list. So only those players in the nomination, in the team sheet that are nominated players, can be involved in practice on the field during play. Quite importantly, no ball other than the match ball is to be used for this practice. I once had a match in Oudtshoorn. It was the home province, Southwestern District against Eastern Province. And the match started on time at 10 a.m. But we had a player who arrived very close to the beginning of the match. Say he arrived at about 10 minutes before 10. I think he was writing an exam. And he was actually one of the opening bowlers for Southwestern Districts. And the first over of the match, he didn't bowl. He was scheduled to bowl the second over of the match. So he was fielding at fine leg in the first over of the match. And what he did was a coach, the bowling coach, stood outside of the field, and this player standing inside the field of play between deliveries was using a practice ball to bowl to the coach standing outside the field of play. And the Eastern Province side, who were on the balcony just above where this bowler was practicing during the first over, they saw this and they started making a bit of a noise to draw our attention. And we told him that he cannot practice bowling with any other ball other than the match ball. So he had to stop there and then. We gave him and his team a first and final warning for illegal practice on the field. No bowling practice takes place in the area between the square and the boundary in a direction parallel to the match pitch. So let's just have a look at the field again. The law tells us that no practice during the match can take place in this area that I'm highlighting. The area that is parallel to the pitch, all the way from the middle up until the boundary on each side of the field. Okay. So you'll often find when bowlers are about to start their spell, they start practicing, and they practice by bowling practice deliveries to mid on or mid off. And that is, according to law, allowable. It is outside that area that is parallel to the pitch. And we as umpires need to make sure that any practice on the field is not in contravention of Law 41.3, changing the condition of the match ball, or Law 41.9, time wasting by the fielding side. Is a bowler allowed a trial run-up? Yes, a bowler is permitted to have a trial run-up, provided again that they are not wasting time. And also 41.12, the fielder is not damaging the pitch when following through on the practice run-up. I've touched a little bit on the penalties for contravention. All forms of practice subject to three laws. We need to make sure that the match ball is not being changed in its condition when there is practice on the field. We need to make sure that there's no time wasting by the fielding side, and we need to make sure that the fielder or the bowler is not damaging the pitch when practicing. If there's a contravention of any of these provisions, then the umpire shall warn the player that this practice is not committed and is not permitted, and inform the other umpire as well as both captains for the reason of this warning. If the contravention is by a batter at the wicket, the umpire shall inform the other batter and each incoming batter that the warning has been issued, and the warning shall apply to the team of that player throughout the match, not just the innings. If during the match there is any further contravention by any player of that team, the umpire shall award 5 penalty runs to the opposing side, inform and report. Okay. Last law from my side this evening before Abdullah takes us through 28 to 31. Law 27 is the wicketkeeper. The wicketkeeper has got protective equipment that only he or she can wear. They are the only fielder permitted to wear gloves and external leg guards. If these are worn, they are to be regarded as part of his or her person for the purposes of fielding the ball. If by the wicketkeeper's actions and positioning when the ball comes into play, it is apparent to the umpires that he or she will not be able to carry out the normal duties of a wicketkeeper, then he or she shall forfeit this right and also the right to be recognized as a wicketkeeper in terms of taking a catch, affecting a stumping, and also the protective equipment that a wicketkeeper is allowed to wear. Limitation of onside fielders and encroachment of the pitch, Abdullah will cover in Law 28. Let's have a look at what the wicketkeeper's gloves look like. And the restrictions are that there should be no webbing between the 4 long fingers. So you can see that we have webbing between the thumb and the index finger, but no webbing is allowed between the index and the middle finger and the ring finger and the pinky finger. Okay. Many years ago, they used to allow as much webbing as possible, and also the webbing between the thumb and the index finger used to be big pouches that a wicketkeeper could catch the ball with. That has been restricted, as you can see, to a straight line between the thumb and the index finger. It is now non-stretch material between the thumb and the index finger that is allowed. When a hand wearing the glove has the thumb fully extended, the top edge being taut and not protruding beyond the straight line joining the top of the index finger to the top of the thumb. Okay, so that webbing is not allowed to stretch further than you can see on the picture. Position of the wicketkeeper. Where is the wicketkeeper to stand? The wicketkeeper shall remain wholly behind the wicket at the striker's end from the moment the ball comes into play until a ball delivered by the bowler either touches the bat or person of the striker or passes the wicket at the striker's end or the striker attempts a run. We had a question last week about the stumping of Dinesh Karthik in the last over of the T20 World Cup match between India and Pakistan in Melbourne Cricket Ground last year. Why was the wicketkeeper allowed to come in front of the stumps, grab the ball, and then affect the stumping? It was because the ball came off the pads of Dinesh Karthik. So law allows that you can move in front of the stumps when the ball touches the bat or person of the striker. So that's what happened there. In the event of the wicketkeeper contravening this law, the striker's end umpire shall call and signal no ball as soon as applicable after the delivery of the ball. Let's have a look at a thorough explanation of the wicketkeeper's positioning and movement.
Hello guys, welcome to my channel. First, let's watch a footage from the T20 match between India and Australia, which happened on 21st of November 2018. Australian wicketkeeper Alex Carey ends up touching the stumps before the ball reaches him. And after referring to the third umpire, it was declared a no ball. So what do you guys think about it? It's a no ball because he touched the stumps? Well, let's find out. Before going any further, let us take a look at the restrictions a wicketkeeper has. He has restrictions both on his movement and position. According to cricket law, after the ball comes into play, well, to know when the ball comes into play, watch the above video. And before the ball reaches the striker, it is unfair if the wicket keeper makes any significant movement. In this case, umpire will call it dead ball and further action will be invalid. However, he is allowed to make certain movements. Let's take a look at them. He is allowed to move a few steps forward for a slower delivery, but doing so should not bring the stumps in his reach. He is allowed to move laterally, like this wicketkeeper, in response to the direction in which the ball has been delivered. He is allowed to move in response to the stroke that the striker is playing, like this wicketkeeper does, but he has to make sure that he follows the law 27.3.1. Let's see what exactly that law is. The wicketkeeper shall remain wholly behind the wicket. He can't even be parallel to the stumps from the moment the ball comes into play till either of the following things happens. Ball touches the bat or body of the striker. So he can come ahead of the stumps right after the ball touches the bat or batsman's body, just like this keeper does. Next case, he can come ahead after the ball passes the stumps. And he can come ahead if the striker starts running without playing the shot. It will be called a no ball in case of keeper violating this law. In the case of Alex Carey, ball had touched the bat when he broke the wicket. Hence, this is not a violation of law. But he was parallel to the stumps before the ball made contact with the bat. Hence, it was called a no ball. Another instance which needs a mention here is anti-flowers incident. He is clearly ahead of the stumps even before the ball reached the batsman. It should have been called a no ball, but the umpire didn't notice it at all, and unfortunately, it costed Ridley Jacobs his wicket. Still have any doubts with this? Do let me know in the comment section. If you like the video, hit the like button, share with all your friends. To never miss another update from our channel, don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification button.
So there you have the restrictions on a wicketkeeper in terms of movement and his or her position. Let's quickly summarize the movement by the wicketkeeper. After the ball comes into play and before it reaches the striker, it is unfair if the wicketkeeper significantly alters his or her position in relation to the striker's wicket, except for the following: movement of a few paces forward for a slower delivery, unless in doing so, it brings him or her within reach of the wicket. So if the wicketkeeper is standing back to a bowler, and a lot of fast bowlers do signal to their when they are about to bowl a slower delivery. So the wicketkeeper is allowed to move a couple of steps forward so that they are able to catch a delivery that is slower than normal. However, the law says that the wicketkeeper cannot step so far forward that they are right up to the stumps if they were not previously for that delivery standing up to the stumps. Lateral movement is also allowed in response to the direction in which the ball has. If a ball is leg side, the wicketkeeper is well within his or her rights to follow the ball down leg side to be able to field it. The wicketkeeper is also allowed a movement in response to the stroke that the striker is playing, or that his or her actions suggest that they intend to play. And we will see a great picture of a Bangladeshi wicketkeeper doing this against Temba Bavuma in a test match in 2017. In the event of keeper, either umpire shall call and signal dead ball and inform the other umpire of the reason for doing so. So unfair movement is punished by a dead ball. Unfair positioning
is punished by no ball. And Abdullah will confirm in his slides that it is the same for the keeper as it is for any other fielder, those two punishments I've just mentioned. So what else shall the bowlers and umpire do? They shall award 1 run penalty for a wide or no ball if applicable. And because of the unfair movement of the wicketkeeper, they shall also award 5 penalty runs to the batting side, inform and report. Okay. This is the legal movement allowed by a wicketkeeper in response to a shot being played or suggested to being played by a batter. Because the wicketkeeper is behind the batter, it will not be a distraction to the batter if the wicketkeeper moves laterally to where they think the ball will go. And this picture was taken a split second before the wicketkeeper took an excellent catch, having moved in response to the shot that Themba Bavuma was intending to play and eventually did play. So that is perfectly legal and a great catch by the Bangladeshi wicketkeeper. If in playing at the ball or in the legitimate defense of his or her wicket, the striker interferes with the wicketkeeper, he shall not be out except obstructing the field from being caught. Okay, we'll deal with that in Law 37 on Wednesday when we are going through the modes of dismissal. That is me for this evening. I shall chat to you again for the question and answer session after Abdullah has taken us through laws 38 to 28 to 31. Over to you, Abdullah. I hope you had a great day on the park today.
Good evening to you, Tom. Thank you so much. And good evening to the rest of the attendees. Yes, it was an amazing day. I officiated in the over 50 World Cup. Canada was playing the West Indies. And yeah, it was an amazing experience just being part of the World Cup, being part of the great names that played for the West Indies and Canada a few years ago. So before I kick off with Law 28, which covers the fielder, Tom, just to answer your question that you posed earlier as to when to call dead ball and when to call no ball and dead ball. So the law tells us that as soon as the striker leaves the pitch or has no part of his or her person on the pitch or over the pitch, or i.e. leaves the pitch to play the ball, the umpire must call dead ball. So soon as striker leaves the pitch, the body is totally off the pitch, must call and signal dead ball. But when do you call and signal no ball and dead ball? And this is where the no ball law comes into effect. So you will do it when the ball pitches partially or totally off the pitch. So if you can visualize bowler bowling and the bowler bowls the ball and it pitches off the pitch. And after pitching off the pitch, you will call and signal no ball. And now the striker, the ball is now off the pitch. The striker now leaves the pitch to play at the ball. Then you must call and signal no ball and call and signal dead ball. The reason for the no ball was pitched off the pitch. The reason for the dead ball, the striker has now left the pitch totally to play at the ball. So to summarize, you call and signal no ball and dead ball if the no ball law gets activated. For example, the ball pitching bowler pitches the ball off the pitch, or the bowler pitches it on the pitch and it bounces the second time, and now it starts rolling off the pitch, and the striker now needs to leave the pitch to play at the ball. So again, the no ball law gets activated. Let's say the ball was bounced twice before reaching, or more than once before reaching the popping crease, and then the striker left the pitch to play at the ball. To kick off my laws for this evening, the fielder. So is a normal fielder allowed to use the wicket keeper's equipment? Because many a times you'll see, and we'll see in this this video, it happens in many a game where the ball gets hit to, let's say, short fine leg, and the keeper will whip off his or her glove to and chase after the ball to gather the ball much better with the hand and throw it in towards the stumps. Is that allowed or not? Yes, the keeper is allowed to discard his or her glove, but, and we'll see in this example, only the keeper is allowed to wear his or her equipment. And we'll now see if any of the other fielders actually pick up that equipment, uses it while the ball is still in play. We will now see what the punishment is as per the law. Let's look at this video.
Babar Azam wearing a glove and actually caught the ball, and then that was deemed illegal fielding. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, right, the first delivery, there's 5 penalty runs, and that's because of illegal fielding, because Babar Azam picked up Rizwan's glove and used it to catch the ball,
So yes, only the wicketkeeper is allowed to use the keeper's equipment. If any other fielder uses it while the ball is still in play, that is deemed as illegal fielding. And we will now go through the punishment of what the law says, what the punishment we need to give if illegal fielding happens. So fielding the ball. A fielder may field the ball with any part of his or her person: foot, hand, tummy, back, head, any part of the person. That's what the law tells us. However, it will be deemed to have fielded the ball illegally if, while the ball is in play, the fielder uses any other part than his or her person to field the ball. It will also be seen as illegal fielding if a fielder extends his or her clothing, and the extension of the clothing, the fielder then uses this to field the ball. And thirdly, if a fielder willfully discards a piece of clothing or equipment, and then after willfully discarding that piece of clothing or equipment, and while then the ball is still in play, it then makes contact with the discarded piece of clothing or equipment, that is also deemed as illegal fielding. Example of point number 3 is where you willfully discard. Let's say the short leg fielder had a helmet on. That fielder then, in chasing after the ball, discards his or her helmet willfully and chases after the ball, picks it up, throws it in towards the stumps, and then the ball actually hit that discarded helmet. That is deemed as illegal fielding, and we'll see the punishment in the next slide. But to emphasize point number 3, the clothing or equipment must be discarded willfully. because there are times where your clothing or equipment will fall off accidentally. Like you'll see many occasions, fielder chasing after the ball, and then the wind blows the fielder's cap off his or her head. That is then accidentally the hat accidentally then fell off the fielder's person. If then, while the ball is still in play, it makes contact with the hat that accidentally fell off, that is not seen as illegal fielding. The equipment or clothing must be willfully discarded and not accidentally. So this is deemed as illegal fielding. Remember, I just said you can field it with any part of your person, but the fielder here uses his hat to field the ball. This is seen as illegal fielding. So, what punishment does the law give for illegal fielding? So if a fielder now fields the ball illegally, so whether it's with the hat in the previous picture, whether it's the video that we saw of Baba Azam using the keeper's glove to field the ball while the ball was still in play. So if illegal fielding takes place, the law tells us, firstly, the moment the ball touches, whether it was the glove or let's say a hat that was willfully discarded, or in this picture, the moment the ball touches the hat, the ball immediately becomes dead. If there was a no ball or wide from that particular ball, that it will always stand. The law then tells us that any runs completed by the batters shall be credited to the batting side. So if the batters ran 2 runs, and if they crossed for the third when the ball hit the discarded, let's say, cap or helmet, those runs will count. The ball also not to count as 1 for the over. Also, award 5 penalty runs to the batting side. And you will then inform everyone and report everyone. So you can see it's fairly harsh punishment if illegal fielding happens. So what happens with the protective helmets belonging to the fielding side? What do you do with it? Is that allowed? Yes, fielders are allowed to wear protective helmets. But often, especially if spinners are bowling, you'll find whether it's the keeper or the short leg fielders or the close fielders wearing helmets, and then maybe the next over a quicker bowlers bowling, and then they remove these helmets. So the law tells us they don't need to take it off the field. The law allows for the protective helmets, when not in use by any of the fielders, that they should be put behind the wicketkeeper and in line with both sets of stumps. So if they're not in use, behind the keeper, about 3, 4, 5 meters behind the keeper, but in line with both sets of stumps. So now, and it happened to me a few times. So now where the law allows for the keeper's helmet to be put behind the keeper in line with the set of stumps. But now what happens if while the ball is in play, the ball now goes against the helmet? The law tells us that as soon as the ball touches the helmet that was placed behind the keeper, the ball immediately becomes dead. 5 penalty runs shall be awarded to the batting side. Also, any runs completed by the batters, together with a run in progress, if the batters crossed at the instant of the ball striking the helmet, those runs shall also count. Movement by fielders. We've discovered what the keeper's allowed to do and what the keeper's not allowed to do. So what are the fielders allowed to do and not allowed and not allowed to do? So the law tells us that any movement by any fielder, and we're now not referring to the keeper, after the ball comes into play and before reaching the striker is unfair, except there are 3 exceptions. What the fielder is allowed to do minor adjustments to his or her stance or position in relation to the striker. So only minor adjustments. Let's say the short cover was standing up straight. Now the bowler is running in, and the short cover decides to crouch. That is a minor adjustment to the stance of the short cover fielder. No problem as per the law. The law also tells us that movement by any fielder towards the striker or the striker's wicket, as long as it does not significantly change the position of the fielder. So fielders allowed, as the bowler's running in, to take 1 or 2 steps. You know, you've always walking with the bowler. You are allowed to take 1 or 2 steps as the bowler's running in. But it should only be 1 or 2 or 3 steps. It should not change the position of that fielder significantly. So that fielder cannot be standing in a usual mid-off position. Now the bowler starts running in, and as the ball is about to reach the striker, suddenly the fielder is close to or short cover. That is significantly changing the position of the fielder. That is not allowed. Also, movement by any fielder in response to the stroke that the striker is going to play, or that his or her action suggests the striker is going to play. Example of this is the switch hit or the reverse sweep. If there's if the striker indicates that there's going to be a switch hit or reverse sweep, the fielder is then allowed to move. So now we know what the fielder is allowed to do. These 3 points that we've just covered. Anything else, the law tells us, it gets seen as unfair movement by the fielder. And if there is unfair movement by the fielder, either umpire to call and signal dead ball. There's punishment for this unfair movement. If there was a wide or a no ball from that ball, that will always stand. 5 penalty runs shall be awarded to the batting side if there was unfair movement. Inform the captain of the reason why you've given this, and then inform the batters, and as soon as practicable, the captain of the batting side, and report this offence. The wicket is down. When is the wicket down? Let's look at a video.
The wicket is down. The wicket is put down when one or both bails are removed from the top of the stumps, or a stump is struck out of the ground. The situation can be brought about in the following ways: by the ball, by the batsman's bat, by the batsman's bat if he or she lets go of it, or even by some flying part of a bat if it breaks, by the batsman's clothing or body, or some part of his or her equipment falling off, by a fielder with his or her hand or arm, providing the same hand is holding the ball. If the bail merely bounces and comes to rest back on the stumps, then that is not out. The wicket is down at the precise moment that both ends of either bail are removed from the stumps. Right about now. Should you have further questions on this tricky subject, such as how to put the wicket down when one or both bails have already been removed, head over to Law 29 in MCC's The Laws of Cricket.
So this is the correct way to put the wicket down if the bails fell off accidentally. Let's say while the ball was still in play, the wind blew off the bails. And if that is the case, now there's no more bails on the stumps. This is one of the methods to put the wicket down. There are 2 other methods. You can this is one. where you need to remove a stump from the ground, but with the ball in one hand and the stump in one hand, you need to then together remove the stump from the ground. So it needs to be ball in one hand, stump in the other, and you remove the stump out of the ground. This is the correct method of putting the wicket down. If the bails fell off, let's say accidentally while the ball is in play, the wind blew it off. And this is what I did for many years when I still played the game. And I've been given out this way on many occasions because as players, we didn't know the law. And I did this in my playing days because I took the stump in one hand and the ball in the other hand. And this was, as a player, we thought this was the correct way of putting the wicket down. No, it's not the correct way of putting the wicket down. Ball needs to be in one hand, stump in the other. It needs to be together like in this picture. This is the correct method to put the stumps down. If the wind blew off the bails while the ball was still in play, this is the incorrect method. Is the wicket down? Yes, the bail is removed completely from the top of the stumps. Yes, it gets stuck between the stumps, but the criteria that you need to take into account is the bails removed completely from the top of the stumps? The answer to the question is yes. So yes, in this instance, the wicket is down. There are occasions where one bail falls off. Let's say the wind blows off one bail. What do you do now? The law tells us to put the wicket down, you only need to remove the other bail. Not in like in the first picture that I showed you where both bails fell off. And to put that wicket down, you need to remove a stump with the ball and it needs to be removed together. But in this case, only one bail fell off. And now in that case, the law tells us if you want to put the wicket down, if one bail is off, you only need to remove the other bail. When is a batter out of his or her ground?
Batsman out of his or her ground. When a batsman is out of his or her ground, he or she risks being stumped or run out. So when is a batsman out of his or her ground? According to Law 30, a batsman shall be considered to be out of his or her ground unless the bat he or she is holding or some part of the batsman's person is grounded behind the popping crease at that end. Here, for example, the bat is on the crease marking, but not behind it, which means the batsman is most definitely out. But would the batsman be out now? Both the bat and the batsman are over the line, but neither the bat nor any part of the batsman's person is grounded, i.e. in contact with the ground. So, yes, that's out again. This being cricket, there is an exception to this part of the law. If a batsman, who must be running or diving, has already made his or her ground, either with the bat or any part of the body, but subsequently loses contact with the ground while continuing his or her forward momentum as the wicket is put down, he or she will be not out. Next question, and this can be a bit of a headache, what constitutes each batsman's ground? Well, when one batsman is in a ground, i.e. grounded behind a popping crease, then the ground at the other end belongs to the other batsman. If neither is in his or her ground, for example when they are both running between wickets or even stationary, each ground belongs to the batsman who is nearest to it. If both batsmen are level, then where they were before drawing level is the deciding factor. Of course, this being cricket, there are further delightful complications, such as two batsmen in the same ground, or three when you have a striker with a runner. But Never fear, all mental anguish will clear with a little quiet meditation and reference to Law 30 in the Blue Book.
So what is the position of the non-striker? So if the ball gets delivered, where should the non-striker stand? Law guides us, law tells us that the non-striker should be on the opposite side of the wicket to that from which the ball is delivered. Opposite side. There are times where you will allow, within reason, the non-striker to stand on the same side that the bowler is bowling, but there must be a good reason for that. Otherwise, non-striker, opposite side from which the ball is being delivered. So looking at this pick, is this out, run out or not? Keeper remove the bails. Batter standing. Bat resting against his leg behind the popping crease. Out or not out? This is out, and the law tells us the bat needs to be in the batter's hand. Because the bat is not in his hand, it's not part of his person, hence nothing behind the popping crease, i.e. batter run out. Last law that I'm covering for this evening. Unless an appeal is made, umpire do not give the batter out. Law is quite clear. There must be an appeal for the umpire to give the batter out. It happened to me on more than one occasion, where one occasion it was an Albi. I thought it was stone dead. The bowler didn't appeal, or no one appealed. Another occasion, batter playing away from his body. For me, I heard clear sound, but no one appealed. And because no one appealed, you will not give the batter out. Law's clear on this. Although the law allows, even if there was no appeal, you do find, or hardly these days, but you do find those honest batter, faint edge, hardly an appeal, and batter leaves his or her wicket. The law allows for that. But if the batter doesn't leave his or her wicket and there's no appeal, even if you as the umpire think the batter is dismissed by a mode of dismissal, you will not give the batter out. So what happens if a batter leaves his or her wicket thinking he is or she is actually dismissed? The law tells us that you as the umpire needs to intervene as soon as you can to prevent further action from the fielding side. An example of this, and I had it once. It was a noisy stadium. There was 9,000 people in the stadium. No ball call was made, and the batter edged the ball to the keeper. Batter put his bat under his arm and started walking towards the pavilion. Batter did not hear my call of no ball. Batter thought he nicked it. It was a clear nick. Started walking. In that instance, the batter is under the impression that he was dismissed. You as the umpire, either umpire, needs to intervene immediately by calling and signaling dead ball. Why is that? Because the fielding side, the ball is now still alive. So in my case, the fielding side could have run out the batter because the batter left his crease walking towards the changing rooms. So I intervened immediately, called and signaled dead ball. And the moment you call and signal dead ball, anything that happened after that is irrelevant. It's just to protect the batter. If the batter is under the impression that he was or she is actually dismissed, but actually not the case. But remember, it should only be when the batter is under the impression that he or she is dismissed. like in my example, didn't hear the call of no ball. In those instances, you do need to protect the batter. Timing of appeals. Let's see what the law say. A long appeal is still valid. And again, it's highlighted in green. So there is an exam question on this. So the law tells us that for an appeal to be valid, it must be made before the bowler begins his or her run-up, or if there's no run-up, bowling action for the next delivery, and before time has been called. So appeal to be valid must be made before the start of the next delivery. Once that next delivery, once that bowler takes his or her first step for that next delivery, that appeal of the previous ball is not valid anymore. Also, the call of over does not invalidate an appeal, but importantly, it needs to be, the appeal is still valid unless the bowler take his or her first step to begin the next over. So even if you call over, as long as that first step to bowl the first ball of the next over was not taken, that appeal is still valid, and provided the time has not been called. Appeal of house that covers all ways, excuse me, an appeal of house that covers all ways of being out. Fielding side of the bowler does not have to be specific, saying house that for LBW or house that for court. House that covers all modes of dismissals. So in terms of answering appeals, which umpire answers which appeals? Next week, on Wednesday, we'll cover the modes of dismissals. And there are 9 of them. So the law tells us that the strikers end umpire shall answer 3 of those modes of dismissals. And those are hit wicket, stumped, and run out at the strikers end. Those are the appeals that the strikers end umpire needs to adjudicate on. So 3 of the 9. The other 6, bowlers end umpire needs to answer those appeals. And when an appeal is made, each umpire shall answer on any matter that falls within his or her jurisdiction. When a batter has been given not out, either umpire may answer an appeal if it is on a further matter or is within his or her jurisdiction. Are umpires allowed to consult? Let's see what the law tells us. Yes, we are allowed as umpires to consult. So if an umpire, if there's doubt, and the other umpire may have been in a better position to be able to assist you, the law tells us, yes, you are allowed to consult your colleague. Okay. But you need to be careful here. The law allows for consultations to take place, but it needs to be when you're going to consult, let's say whether a ball clearly carried or not. There are times where, let's say, the ball gets edged to first or second slip, where the bowler actually blocks the view of the bowler's in umpire. So the bowler's in umpire could not see whether the catch was cleanly taken or not. So in that instance, you'll call and signal dead ball, you'll walk over to your colleague to consult, and you can ask your colleague whether the ball carried or not. In that instance, yes, you are allowed to consult. The law allows for it. But in instances where, let's say, an LBW, There's an Abu Dhabi appeal. You cannot say, guys, just wait. I quickly want to go chat to my colleague to hear, let's say, whether it was maybe high or whether there was maybe bat involved. No, you're not allowed to. You need to, as the bowlers in umpire, in those type of appeals, whether it's Abu Dhabi or let's say there's a court behind decision, you need to, that falls under you, the bowler's ends jurisdiction. You're not allowed to consult. You need to make your call. Yes, as an umpires, we do have, and before we go onto the field, there are times where we have signals to assist each other with these type of appeals. But in terms of consultation, you cannot stop like in the fair catch scenario where you can actually call dead ball, walk over to your colleague and consult. That is fine, no issue with that. But when there's an LB appeal or a court behind appeal, you cannot stop the game and say, I want to quickly go and consult my colleague. So after consulting your colleague and there's still doubt, once there's doubt, what will the decision be? Not out. Are you allowed to withdraw an appeal? Yes, the law allows the captain of the fielding side to withdraw any appeal, as long as the captain obtains consent of the umpires within whose jurisdiction that appeal fell. If that is the case, captain is allowed to withdraw the appeal. And that withdrawal of the appeal must be done before the instant when the ball comes into play for the next delivery. Before that first ball, the first step of the next delivery is taken. As soon as that bowler takes the first step to bowl the next delivery, the captain is then not allowed to withdraw the appeal anymore. But if it's done before then, no problem. Law allows a captain to withdraw an appeal. Let's look at a video.
Putting on 162 for the third wicket. Then in the final ball of the session, incredible controversy. Owen Morgan thought he'd scored 4 here after some clumsy fielding by Pravan Kumar. And the batsman began walking off the tee. Replay showed, though, the ball never actually touched the rope. So when the bails came off, with Morgan and Bell on their way back to the pavilion, India appealed, perhaps unsportingly, for the unlikeliest run-out you will ever see. And the letter of the law said Bell had to go. A dramatic and savoury end, it seemed, to a brilliant innings of 137. Bell bemused, the crowd furious, with England 254 for 4, where the second session had ended in boos and acrimony. When the England batsmen walked back onto the field after tea, it was to astonished stares and then huge cheers to see Ian Bell amongst them. During the interval, Indian captain MS Dhoni had sportingly withdrawn their successful appeal over Bell's controversial run-out. A big call in every sense, the spirit of the game prevailing over the letter of the law. But England were determined to make their own headlines with their batting. Owen Morgan bringing up his half-century in stunning, putting on.
Thank you so much, Tom. That's the laws I'm covering for this evening. I'm now handing back over to you.
Thanks, Abdullah, and good evening again to all the candidates. I have now activated everybody's camera, and your microphone can also be unmuted. We shall go into the questions in the chat box, and after that we shall allow questions to be taken from the floor. First question in the chat box is from Nazim. If the batter hits a 6, can an absent fielder then request to come back onto the field while that ball is being retrieved? Abdullah?
Thank you for your question, Nazim. Yes, Nazim. A lot of fielders think that it should happen at the end of the over. Law actually allows this to happen at any time. If there's a break in play, and it will not take up any time, you can then allow the absent fielder to return back. Let's say the ball gets hit for a 6. They are busy looking for the ball. There's no issue mid over to allow the absent fielder to return, as long as the absent fielder informs you that he or she is returning. So yeah, just to confirm, you do not have to wait till the end of the over. If there's a break, you can let the absent fielder come back on. Over, Tom.
Perfect. Thanks, Dula. I think the important part there is no time is to be wasted letting the fielder back on. Then we've got the answers to my question as to the width of the pitch. I'm glad to report that everybody got it right today, 3.05 meters. Some of you answered 10 feet, which is also correct. In the exam, you will always have multiple choice questions or true or false. So you don't have to actually memorize the width of the pitch. You will see 3.05 meters / 10 feet as one of the options there for the width of the pitch. And because you know it, you'll recognize the correct option and you will choose that in your multiple choice selection. We will on next week, Monday, be going through a click-by-click demonstration of it is not the level 1 exam, it is the introduction to umpiring exam. So there you will be able to see how to answer questions in the exam and also get a feel of the type of questions that are asked. Next question is from Mark. Movement of fielders. A spinner is bowling and has a slip in place. After the ball is delivered, the batter is setting up to play a sweep shot. Can that slip fielder move in such a way that they are almost in a leg slip position before the batter plays the ball? Abdullah, I'm going to let you answer that question, but while you answer it, I'm going to put the picture back on of Themba Bavuma being dismissed, and you can talk to that picture, Abdullah.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Mark, the law tells us that for a fielder to move, the fielder must wait for the ball to reach the striker. Once the ball has reached the striker, the fielder is then allowed to move. But there were those 3 exceptions, and one of them is the fielder is allowed to move in response to the shot that the batter is about to play. So in this pick, Themba Bavuma shaped to play the paddle sweep. So now the law allows the moment Themba started to shape to play the paddle sweep, from that moment the fielder is allowed to move. Usually the law tells us you must wait till the ball is at the batter, is close to the batter. But in this instance, because Themba shaped to play the paddle sweep, as soon as Themba shaped to play the paddle sweep, the keeper or the slip is allowed to move, like in this case. Themba indicated to play the paddle sweep. The keeper then anticipated this, and Themba was actually caught by the keeper. But the important thing is, otherwise the fielder needs to wait till the ball gets to the batter. But in the case like this, where there's an indication of whether it's a paddle sweep or even a reverse sweep, as soon as that indication is there, the fielders are allowed to move, like in this case. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dula. The next question is from Edward, and it's similar to Mark's question, but there's a slight difference. Edward asks, if a slip fielder moves from the offside to the leg slip position, meaning that the ball will be leg side, is this legal? So this is not in response to a shot being played. This is in response to the direction of the ball being bowled. What does the law say there, Abdullah?
Yeah, so Edward, the law tell us the fielder needs to wait till the ball is at the batter. It's only in relation to the shot that the batter indicates that he or she is playing, then only can the fielder moves. In your instance, that would be seen as unfair, because the fielder there was no shot or that the batter indicated, whether it's, let's say, reverse or paddle sweep or even sweep, because that was not in place. This is not allowed. This is unfair movement by the slip fielder, and this should not be allowed. This is unfair, and there's actually we just saw the penalties, call and signal dead ball. There's actually 5 penalty runs to be given to the batting side for this unfair movement. So in your scenario, Edward, that is not allowed. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dula, and good point differentiating between movement reacting to the direction of the delivery versus movement reacting to the shot that the batter is shaping to play. Next question is from Ashal. Last Saturday in a club match, 2 fielders came onto the field without the umpire's permission. When one of them touched the ball, the umpire signaled dead ball and awarded 5 penalty runs to the batting side. The question is whether another 5 penalty runs should be awarded to the batting side when the second player fields the ball in a subsequent delivery. So I'll have a go at this one, Abdullah. I think in terms of proactive umpiring, once we have called and signaled dead ball and awarded 5 penalty runs when the first fielder touched the ball, then we will also notice that there is another fielder who's on the field without permission. And I'm sure that second fielder on the field without permission will make himself known to us that he is on the field. He will apologize and will say, umpires, can I please come back onto the field? Or I am already on the field. May I have permission to stay on the field? So Ashal, because you are aware that this fielder is back on the field, even though they hadn't previously asked for permission, we as umpires should not be out there to try and catch players out. We should assist where we can. And so we should just warn that player with the second player that came onto the field without permission that you've seen what's happened to your partner. You should also have asked for permission before coming back onto the field. But now that you are on here, you may continue. So, Ashal, to answer your question, we would not penalize them again for 5 penalty runs, because after the first 5 penalty runs were awarded, we would have noted that there's another fielder on the field without permission, spoken to that fielder, and made sure he was aware of what he had done wrong. But we will carry on the field now with him on the field as permitted. I hope that answers your question, Ashal. Next question is from Kunal. If the player serving penalty time and the play has been interrupted due to rain, upon resumption, the fielder does still not then will time be adjusted for the interrupted time? Kunal, I went through a few examples with you for penalty time, and what I didn't give is an example that you are asking. So let's put a scenario together. Bowler is on the field from the start of play at 10 a.m., goes off the field at 10:20 due to a hamstring injury. At 10:30, it starts to rain. And remember what I said is that when there is no play on the field because of an unscheduled break, then penalty time cannot be added to that fielder that is off the field. So from 10:30 to 10:45, when it is raining and nobody is on the field, no play is taking place, then the fielder's penalty time remains at 10 minutes. Why? Because there is no play going on. 10:45 comes around and the players go back onto the field because it has stopped raining, but that fielder is still receiving treatment and does not come back onto the field, then penalty time will continue to accrue against that player because now we have playing time. So from 10:45 until 11 a.m., when everybody's back on the field except the injured player, then those 15 minutes will be added to his penalty time. Remember, from 10:20 to 10:30, he was off the field while there was play on the go, so he owed us 10 minutes. And now we're going to add these 15 minutes that everybody's back on the field and he's not on the field from 10:45 until 11 a.m. And you'll probably find when he comes back on at 11 a.m. that the umpires have adjusted the time for drinks. So when he comes back on at 11 a.m., there is no drinks because we've just come back from a rain interruption. So there's no need for a drinks break. So that bowler will have 10 plus 15, 25 minutes penalty time to serve, and he will be allowed to bowl again at 11:25 when he's been back on the field for 25 minutes to serve the required penalty time that had accrued. I hope that answers your question. Next question is from Saurabh. Can you explain law 28.6.2 with the respect to limitation of on-side fielders and also fielder movement? Abdullah, there's obviously the law that restricts the number of fielders behind square on the leg side. And we also have a restriction in playing conditions for limited overs cricket in terms of how many fielders are allowed on the onside. Can you take us through both examples, please?
Yeah, thank you, Tom. I'll start with the law. The law tells us that no more than 2 fielders are allowed at the instant of the delivery, or when the ball is released. There shall be not more than 2 fielders behind the popping crease. So that is as per the law of cricket. If, let's say, for example, there are 3 fielders behind the popping crease at the instant of when the ball is released, the law tells us to call and signal no ball. So maximum 2 fielders allowed behind the popping crease at the instant of the delivery. So where this comes in terms of the movement of the fielders. Now, let's say there are already 2 fielders behind the popping crease on the leg side. Let's say it's a right-handed batter and there is a fine leg on the boundary behind the popping crease, and there's also a short fine leg. So 2 fielders behind the popping crease. So where these two laws meet is where it now says that, let's say the fielder plays or indicates to play a paddle sweep, and the bowler and the slip fielder now runs to the leg side to catch the ball. So now there are 3 fielders behind the popping crease on the leg side. So as per the laws of cricket, you're not allowed more than 2. And because there's now 3 fielders behind, what should you now do as per the laws of cricket? Call and signal no ball. That is where those 2 laws meet each other. When it comes to playing conditions, the current limited over, whether it's T20 or 50 over playing condition states not more than 5 fielders on the leg side. So similarly, if this happens and a fielder is now there's 5 fielders on the leg side, and now instead of the delivery, there's now 6 fielders on the leg side. That is in contravention of that particular playing condition, where you cannot have more than 6 players on the leg side. Either umpire then to call and signal no ball. So that is where these 2 laws meet each other in terms of what the law and playing conditions says in terms of fielders on behind the popping crease or on the leg side, and with the movement of the fielders. Over, Tom.
Thanks very much, Abdullah. Well explained again. And a thank you from Saurabh. So he's happy with that answer. I do not see any more questions in the chat box. If there are any more questions on the material that we've covered this evening, please put your virtual hand up and we'll give you the floor to go through your question live. I would like to also take this opportunity to wish Mark Young well on Wednesday. We shall be going through laws 32 to 40, and then we shall go through a match preparation presentation. Mark is an umpire and aspiring umpire trainer at KwaZulu-Natal Inland Umpires Association, which is the other side of the country from Cape Town. But he is encouraged by what he sees from Abdullah and I, and so we are giving him the opportunity to send to you all the match preparation presentation, which was sent with the course material before the course started. I will be sending out course material again after the end of the course. So thank you very much for your participation this evening, and we shall reconvene on Wednesday, same time, same place. Have a good night further. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye.